Okay, we have with us Danny Flexen. Danny, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm alright. I'm a bit suspicious now the way you intoned my name.
No, you're very well known and well respected in what you do.
Yeah.
Well, it depends. I think you should be respected for what you've done. You know, moving from obviously, journalism, doing the writing stuff, now doing out on video stuff with reflections, which is some great stuff you're doing there. Talk to us about what's made you move from doing the writing into video.
Predominantly redundancy, to be brutally frank. I was on Boxing News and Fighting Fit, which was the sister magazine. I launched an NFL magazine while I was at NewsQuest as well, called Touchdown, which did quite well. And then they moved me into the financial titles that they own, which wasn't really my thing, until they made me redundant along with lots of other people. Like 30% of their workforce they made redundant when I left in 2017. And since then I've just been freelancing, both written and video for Seconds Out, but also I've been writing for Boxing Monthly. I do a feature or two every month for them. So I'm still keeping my hand in with the writing side, but I think digital's the way everything's going now. And although a lot of people might say I've got a face for radio, I decided to, and I'm not on camera much for the Seconds Out stuff to be fair, but I enjoy doing it. I enjoy getting up close and personal with the fighters. I've always enjoyed the interview side of it. I've always enjoyed doing telephone interviews, face-to-faces for print publications. But this is a way where the viewer gets to see the reaction and the personality of the boxer as well, whereas that doesn't always come across in writing, however good I might think it is.
The surge of media outlets in boxing, do you think that does boxing good or more harm?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. I think it's good that more eyes are on the product than have ever been the case before. I think it's good that we allow, the barriers to get into boxing as a journalist are lower. And in some ways that's good because it lets a lot more people in that would be frowned upon in the past and by elitist attitudes, which I don't agree with. On the flip side though, it does allow people in who maybe aren't qualified to do the job, who, I think from a personal perspective, if you get stuck behind people who are filming with their iPhone, not framing it properly and don't really ask pertinent questions, you can get a bit frustrated. It doesn't happen to us very much, but it has been known. But on the other side of the whole thing, I think it means we lose respect as a group of journalists, whether video or written, in the eyes of the boxers and the decision makers and the trainers and so on and so forth, because they think, well, these video journalists, and they group us all as a collective. I think that's happened for a while now. I think because there are a lot more video journalists now, I don't think you see that as much anymore, this kind of frowning upon, this kind of condescension to the media of that particular medium. But I think there is still a worry that a few bad apples ruin it for the whole bunch. Definitely mixed metaphors there.
Should there not be some sort of accreditation system or some sort of merit as to why a person's got a camera coming in and doing work? Because today we had a situation where it was nationals, which I appreciate, nationals. Okay, but what about those people who are doing their grind, have been doing it 5, 10 years at a time, and they have to go to the back of the queue, and they've got somebody who has been around a year and a half, who doesn't get much viewership, but he's just a fanboy. How does that work out?
I think it's two kind of separate questions. I think longevity in the business takes you so far, and I think that helps you build relationships with promoters and decision makers, which helps you get to the front of the queue in theory. But I think from a business perspective, if you're the promoter of a fight or you're a PR working on the fight, you want to get it seen by as many eyes as possible in the best way possible. Your focus is going to be on viewers for video channels and readers for print publications. And I think that's the way it should be. I think, that's your job. You want to get it out to as many possible consumers as possible. You want to sell the fight, whichever fight it might be. So I think, longevity plays a part, but I don't think people should be jumping to the front of the queue if they've got really low viewership. I think it should be based on how much they can affect the fight itself. And that's not just for how big their audience is, which is obviously very important, but also how well they can sell the fight with their headlines, the way they frame shots, the way they write their pieces, whatever it might be. Just because you've got half the number of viewers as a competitor, it doesn't mean that you sell the fight in a poorer way than they do. It might be better that you sell the fight more effectively to 20,000 people than do a piss poor effort to 40,000. So it just depends.
Frank Warren versus Eddie Hearn. Kind of like...
What, catch weight or?
No, kind of like more like wrestling, wrestling, yeah. Kind of like SmackDown versus Raw.
Yeah.
Do you think we could have a summer event, winner takes all? So like Matchroom versus BT Sport or Box Nation,
Frank
whichever.
Warren
Yeah,
promotion,
Frank Warren, Queensbury, Frank
whatever it
Warren
is.
promotion, whichever it is, Queensbury, whatever it is. But Frank Warren versus Eddie Hearn, one night,
Winner take all.
winner take all.
Yeah.
Like a Royal Rumble
Winner
almost.
gets a shot at WrestleMania. Of Bob Arum or Oscar De La Hoya or Al Heyman.
Well, listen, the way I look at it is boxing's going more like wrestling, more and more all the time. What are your
Long
thoughts
may
on
it
it?
continue. I'm a huge wrestling fan.
Same here.
The first article I ever wrote that I got paid for Boxing News was on what boxing could learn from wrestling.
Yes.
In terms of kind of marketing and
Yes.
PR and that kind of thing, which was kind of mocked a lot by boxing fans at the time. I
Yeah.
hope they've come around a little bit since. But I just remember the designer of Boxing News, who's a good friend of mine, Nick Bond,
Yes.
completely undermined my point by using a picture of the enormous Big Show
Yes.
to illustrate the article. She had this like most unathletic looking WWE wrestler ever. So yeah, it didn't do me any favours, but I've never forgotten Nick, just so you know. But getting back to your question,
Yes.
yeah, I mean, I'd love to see it. It's obviously not going to happen.
Why?
Because they won't work together. They won't work together to benefit the other party. They'll work together if they feel it benefits themselves. You know, so like Billy Joe Saunders was going to fight Demetrius Andrade over in the US because
Yes.
it was a great offer for Saunders, so Frank Warren was willing to let him go over there.
Yep.
And I'm sure the same would be true for a matchroom fighter fighting on a Frank Warren show if it benefited them. But a kind of winner-takes-all event between both camps, as much as we'd love to see it and we do fantasy booking as fans,
Yeah.
they're just not going to do it because they'll get half what they'd get for their normal cards, where they get to take all the money home. So.
Okay, here's another one. We always see the gloves are off. But the gloves are off, what I'd really want to see is Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn sitting down in a room talking boxing, talking promotions.
We got a kind of mini preview of that recently on the radio, didn't we, with Frank Warren and Barry Hearn kind of crossing swords before I believe one of them put the phone down, I'm not sure which. So yeah, I mean, I'd love to see that. It'd be amazing, wouldn't it, them two going at it? But I don't know. I think Frank's at a bit of a disadvantage when it comes to things like that. I think he's very, very good at what he does. He's a great promoter. But I think Eddie Hearn is so well versed and well practiced in doing video interviews, televised press conferences, post-fight interviews with the fighters, photo shoots, the whole lot. And I'm not saying Frank Warren hasn't done these things, of course he has. But Eddie does it as a matter of course. You know, you go to a matchroom press conference now for smaller shows like we did yesterday for Cheeseman versus Garcia, and often the queue to speak to Eddie Hearn is longer than for any of the fighters. That's a separate issue. You know, some people might frown upon that, and I can understand why. But he's the one that gets the views, and it's because he's become so good at it. So I think Frank's at a bit of a disadvantage in a kind of, especially if it's live and not recorded. I think Eddie could kind of out-talk him a little bit, whereas Frank might make more valid points if it was kind of, I don't know, if they did a written piece each or something like that, it might suit Frank more.
Okay, Al Heyman in the UK. Thumbs up or thumbs down?
Well, I'd like to see him actually come to the UK, just so we can verify he exists and, you know, what he looks like, and I can interview him one-on-one. That would probably be my greatest achievement, to just find Al Heyman and do an interview with him. But I think it's a good thing. I think competition in general is a good thing. I think if it leads to pay-per-view being the higher end of the balance compared to normal Sky shows, BT shows, etc., and free shows as well, then that's not good. But part of the deal are free shows on ITV, which is a good thing. ITV pay-per-view, choice is in the hands of the consumer. You can pay for it if you think it's worthwhile, and if you don't, you don't. I don't buy every boxing pay-per-view that's out. Some I do, some I don't. I judge it on quality at the time. But I think him coming over forces the likes of Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren to get on their toes and to up their games, and that's never a bad thing.
Final question. Twitter. The lovely Twitter. Sure you've had a few experiences on Twitter yourself?
Yeah, a few.
What are your thoughts about Twitter, boxing fans in general?
I think it's very similar to the amount of people coming into boxing and doing video journalism. I think it reaches a lot more people now than it used to, and that is a good thing. It lowers the barriers. It allows direct relationships between fighters and fans, which I know can cause arguments on Twitter, but it's a good thing that it's an unvarnished view from a fighter, that you don't have to go through their PR team. That can never be a bad thing. I think there are trolls, but there's trolls in every niche. You know, you'll get comic book fans trolls who hate directors when they change comic book movies to films. You'll get like wrestling trolls are the worst, you know, arguably. You know, and I'm one of them, so I can say that. I've been blocked by more wrestlers than boxers on Twitter, and I'm taking a break from my personal Twitter account at the moment, but I do run the Seconds Out Twitter account, so I still get to see it all, just not get as personally attacked as before. But I don't mind it. Even when I was on there and I got attacked by trolls and stuff, I never really minded it. I think you've got to have a thick skin, and I understand some people haven't got as thick skin, and there's relationships with mental health, and there's issues we need to be aware of. But I think generally it's a good thing. It allows a bit of back and forth, and it makes boxing more interesting. You get hardcore fans, you get casual fans coming together in the same environment. I don't think you see that in many other places. I think it's a good thing overall.
Danny Flexen, thank you so much.
Anytime.